Hey guys, this is going to be my first guide. I actually just recorded about half an hour of me in Deepwind Gorge, and I ended up not having my mic on, so I just kind of sat there talking to myself for about half an hour, telling myself all the important stuff about these glyphs and talents choices, and then I was going to get into gear, but then I realized my mic was muted. So anyways, if I didn't already, or if it wasn't obvious, I'm going to go through talents, then I'm going to go through glyphs, then I'm going to go through gear. And then I'm going to go through in a gear alternative, which is kind of strange, but it's kind of fun to mess with. Alright, so first off, 15 talents. Desperate Prayer and Angelic Bulwark aren't worth it. They're too long of a cooldown for too little. This isn't even a fourth of my health, and this has a 90-second cooldown that shields me for 15% of my max health. Whereas I could stealth, reposition, and shield. Well, shield, stealth, then reposition, and that would probably save me from more damage rather than just healing and trying to just tank up through their damage. It's also on a short cooldown by a lot, and it can really confuse some people who aren't paying too much attention. So for 30, there's Angelic Feather, which is the main one, it's my favorite. It's super good. You can pretty much get about 30 seconds of endless speed, because if you rotate it at the end of every duration, you end up getting the feather. And the feather just keeps going. You can keep yourself moving super fast for a pretty good amount of time. It's almost like being a rogue, except you're not immune to slows. Alright, the other option is Body and Soul. Your Power Word Shield, Leap of Faith, increase your target's movement speed by 60% for 4 seconds. That's alright, but you're not going to be shielding other people too much, because you're going to pretty much be using it on cooldown on yourself to keep yourself alive and healthy without going too long. Phantasm is okay. It's decent against warriors and DKs and rogues if you're trying to just run away. But for the most part, I still think Feather is better, because you can fear and run, you can stealth and run. I don't know. It's just a lot better in my opinion. Level 45, it's kind of just Surge of Darkness at the very top. Insanity, I tried it for a bit. It was interesting to experiment with, to say the least, but overall standing there and casting for that long isn't that beneficial. You end up screwing yourself over most of the time, or you get locked out. And if you get locked out on your shadow, you're kind of dead. The only thing you can do is bubble and stealth away. Yeah. Also, it gives it 50% additional damage combined with Clarity of Power. You end up getting a lot of damage on some Mind Spikes, and you can actually nuke the crap out of people unexpectedly. At level 60, it's between Void Tendrils and Psychic Scream, and it's mostly situational. I pretty much always take Psychic Scream unless I'm versus a warrior, or sometimes a Death Knight, depending on what I'm versus. You never take Void Tendrils versus a Paladin, because they'll just break out of it immediately because they're super cool and they're immune to everything that slows them or impairs them in any way, right? Fun to play against, not to eat. Psychic Scream, really good versus pretty much everything except for the Shamans who are paying attention, and Warriors and Death Knights because of Lichborn. Dominate Mind is really, really mediocre. I don't think it's good, and you have to stand there and cast, and then you can't control your character or do damage throughout the duration. It's just one of those things. And then at 75, your options are Twist of Fate and Power Infusion. Shadow Insight is literally ignored because it's just a watered-down version of Clarity of Power, which I will get to in a bit. Look at those. Those are the Surge of Darkness procs, and then I'm getting wrecked because Death Knights and Rogues. One second. Alright. I should be okay. And here's the stealth, see? Repositioned, confused him, and he's dead. So, 75 is between Twist of Fate and Power Infusion, because Twist of Fate, it's passive, it's good because every time you get someone low, you start doing more damage, you make it harder for them to survive, even though they're probably already having a hard time to survive. So it's kind of just like kicking them while they're down, which is always, you know, beneficial for you when you're in this kind of situation where you're trying to kill someone. Power Infusion is good for setting up bursts, but I do not like running it because it can get purged, it can get spell stolen, and it's not as reliable as a passive. And a lot of the time what ends up happening is you pop it, and then a mage steals it, and then pops Icy Veins and destroys you. Unless you like silence and play really defensively for the duration of it, or start purging, and then you lose damage. At 90, it's between Cascade and Halo. Most of the time I take Cascade because it's just a lot easier to use, you don't have to worry about your positioning as much, and it just does a lot of damage to everything nearby. It ends up looking like just a few numbers and then an explosion of numbers, and it's actually really satisfying to use. And I'll show you in a second once it comes off cooldown. Halo is good for taking people out of stealth initially, like in arenas, say there's a rogue, and you got a feeling that he's right there, you can actually sometimes get them out of stealth, which is pretty nice, but I still like running Cascade just because it's easier to use. And Halo it's like the big ring, if you've ever like seen those giant rings in the middle of the BG and you were like, what the heck is that? That's what it is. Cascade is that bouncing, like, shadow looking thing. I'll show you once we're in a group again, like in a group fight. Alright, so there's him. He looks like he has someone near him. No, that's just a bit. Okay. Well, anyways, at 100, it's really just Clarity of Powers and Auspicious Spirits, but I still like Clarity of Powers so much more than Auspicious Spirits because it's a little bit more reliable and it's just a lot more damage. Like, it's an astounding amount of damage. So if you look, he has no dots on him, from me at least, and so I can end up doing a bunch of damage to him because I get bonus damage. Auspicious Spirits is good if you're doing a crit build with your gear, but most of the time you're going to want to stack Mastery because Mastery increases all your main damage abilities. Damage output by a pretty good amount. I really like stacking Mastery a lot more. Sometimes I'll put the crit trinket on with a Mastery everything else and just kind of have fun. Works out most of the time, but usually you want to go with the versatility trinket because you don't have as many defensives as other classes when you're playing a Shadow Priest, so you have to actually really pay attention to your health bar. Back to Auspicious Spirits though, every time your Shadow Word Pain crits, it shoots out a spirit. And what Auspicious Spirits does is it makes that spirit do double the damage and give you a Shadow Orb, which is really nice in BGs because you can just run around tab targeting and throwing out a bunch of dots and then getting a bunch of Shadow Orbs and then dumping Devouring Plague on everything. But a lot of the time you won't really be able to do that in arenas, and that's kind of more what I'm leaning towards right now. Even though I'm in a BG right now, I'm just kind of having fun showing you the examples of things. But still, most of the time you're just going to want to go Clarity of Power unless you're just messing around. Void Entropy isn't really even an option because it's dispellable. It costs all your Shadow Orbs, well, 3 because that's the max you can consume, but costs a bunch of Shadow Orbs, and it really, that much damage over a minute, that's not even enough to kill someone unless they're like completely under-geared. And a lot of the times at this point, you're not going to find people like that. And if you do, then honestly, you should probably feel bad for them and let them live. Alright, so to Glyphs. There's a lot of good Glyphs for Shadow Priests, in my opinion. There's Mass Dispel, there's Mind Blast, there's Fade, there's Dispersion, there's Psychic Horror, there's Reflective Shield, there's Silence, there's Free Action, which is decent in like Temple of Galmogu if you're trying to reposition really quickly. Where's the other one? There was one more. 1 second. Oh, Delayed Coalescence. It's decent, but most of the time you're not going to want to run it because you don't need to stay in Dispersion that long most of the time, because you disperse, if they're still on you, then honestly you're probably going to die as soon as it ends. But it is good for those times if you're playing with a healer and they just really need that downtime. So that's always an option. Personally, I wouldn't use it, but it's still there. I've seen people use it. It worked out okay for them, I guess. And yeah, so The reason why you want to run Fade, well, let's start off with Dispersion, actually, because it's at the top. So you want to run Dispersion if you're versus something that has a really short cooldown on their CDs, like a Warrior, because of the Warrior perk that lets them have reduced cooldowns every time they spend a bunch of Rage. It ends up adding up pretty quick in terms of value, because every time their cooldown is up, you can just disperse a lot of it in line of sight and just reposition. If you haven't noticed, I'm talking about positioning a lot, because if you get swarmed, you're likely to die, because you don't have the survivability that other classes have. You're not like a Boomkin, you can't self-heal as much, you can't just be a hunter and deterrence, you can't disengage, you can't blink away, you kind of just have to eat it. And that's a problem, so you gotta avoid eating it as much as you can and just position really well. And here's Cascade again, by the way. It's boom, then a bunch of numbers, and it just keeps doubling. It's really nice. Alright, so that's why you would go Fade, is pretty much if you really need to use Dispersion a lot, because it'll help you get more dispersions, and it's mostly an arena thing. You're not really going to run it in BGs, like ever. Alright, so you're going to want to run Fade a lot of the time. Like, Fade is one of the most popular glyphs I see. I really like it. Usually I run it. Right now I'm not, because I wanted to run Mind Blast so that I could snare people and kite. But what it does is it makes you take 10% reduced damage for 10 seconds, which is not that much damage reduction, but you kind of need everything you can get. And it's also 10 seconds, so that's a pretty long time. And it doesn't really cost you anything, because Fade isn't even on the global. So, the global cooldown. So yeah. You want to run Mass Dispel versus Paladins and Mages, because you can dispel bubbles, and if you dispel a bubble, you can most of the time secure a kill, or you can CC chain and then set up to secure a kill, and that's always good. You don't really run it versus anything else unless you're like in a duel and you're versus a Warlock who's running Dark Bargain, because Mass Dispel actually gets rid of that, which is pretty nice. Alright, so Mind Blast, you want to run this versus melees, or if you're doing a crit build. For melees, it's pretty self-explanatory. You hit them, you crit, and then they can't move for 4 seconds, unless they use something to get out of it. So it's pretty nice to have. I like it. But it's not great in every situation, unfortunately. Psychic Horror, it's really good. Most of the time you want to run Psychic Horror, Silence, and Fade. Like, that's the standard 3 that most people run. You'd go Psychic Horror because it's more CC on a shorter cooldown, basically. And because of the 4 set, you actually get the orbs back over 12 seconds anyway, or 9 seconds anyways. So, it's pretty... I like it. It's pretty convenient. You have to actually remember to use it, though. If you're not using the ability, then there's no point in even having it have a shorter cooldown. So if you're one of those people that just really doesn't like using Psychic Horror for whatever reason, don't run it. It's kind of just going to waste you a glyph. Alright, you want to run Reflective Shield versus anything that you don't need these glyphs for. So, say you're versus a Warrior, you don't need Mass Dispel, so you can put it where Mass Dispel is. Say you're versus a Rogue, same story. Druid, pretty much anything that's not a Mage or Paladin. Or that one situation with a Warlock with Dark Bargain. And then you run Fade and stuff like that. You run Silence pretty much all the time, unless you're versus people who don't cast, such as Rogues, Warriors, Hunters, Paladins, kind of Shamans, Ferals, a lot of the time, if they're not going to self-heal. And so you can... There's a lot of options for glyphs in Shadow, but this, for BGs, is what I like to run, because it helps me kite, helps me handle healers that bubble, or when someone else gets bubbled, or if a mage just Mass Dispels and I really just dislike his face, I'll just do it. And then Glyph of Silence, really good, just in most situations. The only glyphs that I think are 100% gonna get used in almost every situation, if you just want to have a page that's super versatile, would be Fade, Psychic Horror, and Reflective Shield. Like, those 3 would pretty much always be used, at least a little bit, if you're using all your abilities. So that's it for talents and glyphs. Let's get to gear. For gear, you want to enchant all your stuff with Mastery. Mastery increases your damage of your Mind Blast, Mind Spike, and Mind Flay by a lot. And we have really good scaling with Mastery for whatever reason. So yeah, that also works well with Clarity of Power with your Mind Spike because you end up hitting really freaking hard. Like, watch, I'm gonna hit him. Alright, I'm actually gonna hit this guy because he's right here. But see the damage? That's a pretty good amount of damage for just hard casting it. That's not including a proc from Surge of Darkness. Anyways, so there's the Death Knight. So I'm going to try to stay out of his range, positioning well, but not jumping into a horrible spot where I'm guaranteed to die. Until now, and then I'm going to levitate, that way I don't fall into the water and die. I'm going to kill him with instacasts. So, anyways, for the headpiece, the chest piece, the pants, and the gloves, you're going to go with the set bonus, because you get those 4 set, and then you can also get Mastery and Versatility, which is really great on your shoulders. For offsets, you're going to want to go with the Pendant of Cruelty because it has Mastery on it. You're going to want to go with the Band of Prowess because it has Haste, and then you can enchant it with Mastery, and then you go with the Band of Cruelty because it has Haste and it has Crit. Then you enchant it with Mastery. Unfortunately, there's no PvP rings with Mastery on it for Shadow Priests, but you could run the crafted rings and fully upgrade them. I've seen a lot of people do that. I know a lot of the higher rated Shadow Priests run that, and I wanted to try it out. I just don't have the gold to do that. So that's something to look into if you have a copious amount of gold and just feel like showing off or trying it out. Give me some feedback on how that works, please. So yeah, for belt, you're going to go with the Warmongering Gladiator's Cord of Victory because Mastery and Versatility. Defensive and damage. Really good. So yeah, for the weapon, you're going to go with the Energy Staff because it has Mastery on it. The bracers, you're going to go with the Cuffs of Prowess because it has Mastery on it. And Crit, so Crit works really well with your Auspicious Spirits. Even though you might not be running that, it's just kind of there. So, pretty much stack Mastery. That's the rule of thumb if you just can't remember the items I listed off. Rule of thumb, stack Mastery. For the trinkets, you're going to want to go Versatility on both of them, unless you have a certain comp that you're running and you want to have very specific bursting times, in which case you'll run the activated trinket that will give you a bunch of versatility on use. I don't remember what it's called. I don't happen to have one in my inventory. But yeah. Anyways, the other options for offsets is the crit build that I mentioned earlier. With the Auspicious Spirits, you'll end up throwing out a lot of Devouring Plagues. I don't know if that's your thing, then maybe try it out, see how it works for you. Personally, I don't like it that much, but some people do. I know that it's good in RPGs, but in arenas it's probably really mediocre because you can't spread your Shadow Word as much as you would otherwise. So you would go Victory and Cruelty for rings, you would get the Crit Trinket, and you would get the Crit Necklace, Crit and Haste, and then you would get the back piece that has Crit on it, and then enchant all that stuff with Crit. Because you're stacking Crit, obviously. I've only said it like 40 times. So there's that. Another option, which I saw a guy doing, was he was stacking, like he had none of the set, he just stacked Versatility. I think he was actually a disc main spec, and that's why he had the funky gear. But, you know, it could have worked, maybe. I think I actually outdamaged him, though, with a Mastery build. So I'm in a really bad position. My team is super far away. I actually don't seem to have a team with me. So I'm going to try to disperse and get to the cannon. Maybe they'll switch to the cannon. Anyways, I'm probably going to die here. You gotta do everything you can to live, including shield, including CC. Just pop everything, not at once. Obviously, you want to like try to drag it out so that you can live. Get your shield up every time. But unfortunately, ferals can kind of stick to you no matter what. Because Blizzard's really good at balancing their classes. If you haven't noticed, it's kind of been the same 3 classes for a while. But I'm not here to talk about that. So yeah, the gear options kind of, in my eyes, it's just Mastery versus Crit, and Mastery wins it by a long shot. So rotation, I totally forgot to mention that. The rotation, pretty much Mind Blast whenever it's off cooldown so that you can get the Shadow Orbs, and then dots if you want to do dots. You don't always have to do dots. I usually don't, because I like to stand there and spam Mind Spike for a bit so that I can set up for bursts, because it puts them low, generally gets a few of their defensives out. Sometimes you get locked though, like I just did, and when you do, you get locked out of pretty much everything except for your talents, which is a little unfortunate, but it happens. He's gonna go for the cannon. I really don't want to let him get that. Or the Demolisher. But, anyways, pretty much dump Mind Spikes whenever you're trying to burst someone down. If you're trying to set up for perfect burst, you want to get 5 Shadow Orbs, wait for your Mind Blast to come off cooldown, and then you will Devouring Plague, Mind Blast, maybe throw out some more dots, get a Fear or something, let your Devouring Plague tick a little bit, and then drop another Devouring Plague, and then keep Mind Blasting on cooldown. If you're absolutely going for like some hardcore burst style, you could Mind Spike, but be wary that it will take off the dot from Devouring Plague, because Mind Spike removes all of your diminishing or damage over time effects. So that does not take off other players' dots. So say this lock here, say he puts like Immolate or Unstable Affliction, and then I use Mind Spike, it won't get rid of that, so you don't have to worry about that. The only thing that you need to be aware of is that it will get rid of yours, but what you can actually use that to your benefit if you end up trying to do damage on the move and you want to use Mind Spikes that deal 40% extra damage, because whenever you have Clarity of Power, when they're not affected by your dots, they take 40% extra damage from most of your spells, which is really nice. As you can see here, I'm tearing this guy a new one. A lot of the time I actually just don't dot though, which is probably an issue on my part. You should try to dot as much as you can if you know you will not be able to catch someone. That way you can deal damage to them while they run away or you're CC'd. Try to Mind Blast literally every time it's up cooldown. I can't stress that enough. Any time it's up, you need to use it. The only time you don't use it is if it'll break a CC. That's kind of self-apparent. There's obvious. Self-explanatory. That's the word. So, yeah. I don't know if we're going to win this BG, but I don't really care too much. In situations like this where they're all grouped up, that's a good time to use Cascade. And then just kind of deal damage to a bunch of stuff. So yeah. Situational things, like cooldowns and when to use them, are going to be Shadow Fiend. It amplifies the shadow damage they take by a bit. I think it's like 20% for the duration of that debuff. So it's a good thing to use when you're trying to set up for like a burst of some sort. Like, say you're with a Shadow, or no, Affliction Warlock. You would throw that down, they'd start doing their burst stuff, you'd start dumping your Devouring Plague and Mind Blast into the guy, and he's probably going to go down. It sounds like it'd be a very difficult feat to keep him up. So, yeah. There's that. Another CD, it's kind of important. It's actually kind of one of your most important ones, even though it doesn't seem like it's that great. It's only 10% of your single target shadow damage, and it only lasts 15 seconds, but it heals you for 10%. And that doesn't seem like much, but your Mind Blast is going to be critting for 100k if they're not affected by dots and stuff. So that's 10k healing from one Mind Blast. You can get 3 Mind Blasts off in the duration of that. Yeah. Not including your Mind Spikes and your dots, and it actually heals you off Cascade too, and it also heals your teammates. So if your healer is like under a lot of pressure and you just need to absolutely help him, you can look into doing that. It's a really good thing to do, and pretty much use it if it's use it like Ancestral Guidance for a shaman, or like what's it called, the druid version of it that does the same thing but better, because druids. See here, there's that bubble. He actually ran out of that, unfortunately, but had I gotten that, pretty sure we would have killed him. But we're going to kill him anyways, because we're douchebags, and we really could care less about winning. We just want to kill people. Welcome to the Horde. Hey, there's that feral that wouldn't get off me earlier. Alright, he stealthed. So there's that cooldown. Cascade in team fights, pretty much whenever it's all cooldown. There's no point holding on to it because it doesn't really cost you anything. It's like a little bit of mana, and you're going to generate that by the time the global ends, probably anyways. Fade. If you're running the Glyph of Fade, that makes you take less damage, you would use it whenever you're going to be taking a decent amount of damage. It's not your super oh shit button, but you can definitely help your healer out by using it. Another time to use Fade is if you're running that one glyph that makes it so that you can't get silenced throughout the duration of Fade, or throughout like 5 seconds after casting it. It's pretty nice because you can end up doing a really good job of hard casting a bunch of stuff if you're doing that for whatever reason. Like right now I'm just standing here hard casting, no one's really paying any attention to me. But if you stand there and cast Mind Flayed, most people see that line and it's like a giant target on your head. So you gotta be really careful about when you want to do that. Main focus is going to be healers or anyone who looks really vulnerable. So like this warrior in the back, he looks really vulnerable, so I'm going to kill him. This mage is vulnerable, I'm critting, he's taking a lot of damage, I'm going to try to finish him. Oh, I forgot to mention, you're going to want to use Shadow Word Death anytime it's open, because it hits like a freaking train. And that's how you're going to secure a lot of kills and piss your team off, especially warriors who are trying to get that victory rush proc. You can just slap them in the face and take their kill. It's really fun to do. Alright, feathers. You pretty much use those whenever you need to move fast or reposition quickly, or if you need to help a teammate out. Say you're helping your flag carrier out, you would run ahead, you would grip him with a leap of faith, and then you'd start throwing feathers. You'd feather him, well, you'd probably want to feather yourself first, and then feather him or her. That way they can run fast with the flag. Or even an orb in Temple of Katmogu. And stuff like that. He was low, I turned, killed him. It's kind of what you gotta look for. Yeah. Dispersion is your biggest defensive cooldown. It pretty much, it could essentially be a bubble, really, except worse because you can't heal yourself during it. But you can still run around, so that's nice. A good thing to do is try to get your power word shield off anytime you try to do that. That way you're not losing health at all. They're just trying to burst through your bubble even though you're dispersed. So it's not much, but it could make the difference. And it lets your healer heal you. It's like a 6-second duration of you taking 90% less damage and being able to reposition, which ends up being, you know, pretty nice. You can save your life with it. You could also prevent your healer from popping their cooldowns by using it, although you'd want to try and hold it as long as you can, because it does, in fact, do a lot, and it's your only real strong defensive cooldown. Alright, so I think that's about, oh wait, no. Psychic Scream. You use that to set up for kills, you use that to save yourself, you use it to peel, and you would also use it just to get pets off you. Like, it doesn't seem like pets do a lot, but as a Shadow Priest, you're going to end up taking a lot of damage from that pet in the end, because you can't just kite it, and you don't have the spare CC to just get rid of it like mages do, and you can't just root pets like a druid. So a lot of the time, you're going to end up trying to fear Stampede off you, you're going to try to fear Feral Beast, or whatever the heck it's called. The Hunter, like 45 Talon or something. And, yeah, it's one of... I like to use it defensively most of the time, but you can use it offensively. A lot of the time, you can set up a kill with it, like here, boom, fear the healer. If that was an arena, their partner would be vulnerable because he doesn't have healer, that he would have to play defensively and probably have to pop cooldowns because of the lack of a healer for that 6-second duration, or if they trinket. You can also force trinkets with that. It does a pretty good job of it, because for whatever reason, people hate it. The only time you don't want to use that is on a warrior who's bursting, because they're just going to use Berserker Rage and go through it. Unless you're, like, really desperate to do it, in which case, you should probably do it. You might be able to get that extra split second for your healer to get a heal off, or for you to get a heal off, or a shield or something. It's just kind of not a good spell versus warriors, because it's a fear. Speaking of which, for warriors, you kind of don't have any way to keep yourself alive besides your dispersion and fade and stealth. So, speaking of stealth, you're going to want to do that whenever you need to reposition, anytime you're vulnerable and you need to absolutely get out. An example would be, I could use it right now, but no one's hitting me, so I'm not going to bother. Whenever you do use it, try to use Power Word Shield on yourself beforehand. That way you can take an extra hit, basically, before you get knocked out of stealth, because it will shield you, and if it hits your shield, you actually, normally, you don't get taken out of stealth, because it's a shield, and it doesn't affect your health bar. But if it damages your health bar, whatever the source is, it's going to knock you out of stealth. So, that being said, usually what I like to do is shield stealth, immediately after. And, so, yeah. As you saw, I was just rotating using my Mind Blast whenever it was off cooldown. You end up getting a lot of damage. You can actually heal a lot more than I did. I only healed for 1.2 mil. Sometimes you can get almost as much as a healer if you're using your Devouring Plague a lot and you're doing Vampiric Embrace. That's one thing that the crit build does do better than Mastery, is that it will heal you more, because, oh Jesus Christ, levitate. Alright, what the heck is going on here? Okay. I don't know what I just fell into, literally, but that was cool. I got to see a rogue die. It's my favorite. I hate rogues. Oh, I hate fighting rogues, correction. I love when they're on my team because they're ridiculous. For minor glyphs, it really doesn't matter. They're pretty much all cosmetic. So, these are the three I like. I like the Shadow Ravens, I like my pets and my mounts being shadowy, and I also like being a little bit more transparent, so you can see my X-Mog. And my X-Mog's kind of basic. Its character is relatively recent, but I like it. I don't think I'll be changing it for a while. But, yeah. Did I miss anything? Yes. Okay, Silence. You use this to set up kills, to save people, and to interrupt and stop people from casting. A lot of the time you're going to be using this on healers. Pretty obvious. Dispel Magic. You use that whenever you see magic cooldown. So say this paladin here, say he pops his Hand of Protection. You would just start purging it off, if you have a physical DPS. If you're just doing a magic comp, like Mage, Priest, Druid, that's God comp, what you do is you ignore the fact that he used Bop, because it does nothing against you, because you're all magic damage, so there's really no reason for you to waste a valuable globals on trying to get rid of it. Shackle Undead. You use this for the most part never, but if your versus an Unholy DK, it can actually save your life, because you can shackle their Gargoyle and you can shackle their pet. And if a Death Knight pops Lichborn, you can actually shackle them, which is an important thing to remember. So try to keep your eye out for that. I think that is all. Let me know if I missed anything. Let me know if there's something I should change. And just all general tips would be appreciated. Anyways, later.